Hi, I'm JB Jones,
And I'm Bella Naiman.
and we're the co-founders of NYC Jewelry Week. We are excited to welcome you to our 6th year New York City Jewelry Week 2023.
Welcome to our virtual talks program. On our YouTube channel, you'll get to enjoy incredible content that we've put together for you with the theme of iconography, looking at the past, present, and future of jewelry.
You can see the full schedule on our website at nycjewelryweek.com, and we invite you to explore all the programs there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to 5 Women at the Four Corners of the Earth. My name is Linda Kozloff-Turner, and I am the owner of Pristine Marguerite Designs, a jewelry studio in Boulder, Colorado. And I'm also the author of Women of Jewelry. You can find me at www.womenofjewelry. And please follow us on Instagram at Women of Jewelry. Today, I have asked Zuleika Aziz to join us here to speak about her country, to talk about her process as a designer. When her grandfather was imprisoned and tortured, and her uncles were disappeared due to the Soviet invasion, her family made the difficult decision to flee to the United States. Zuleika explained to me that the difference between being an immigrant and a refugee: an immigrant chooses to leave for a better life, while a refugee is forced to flee for their life. Her grandmother brought pieces of ancestral jewelry with her when she fled Afghanistan in the 1980s. These pieces became family heirlooms that were used to teach Zuleika about her Afghan culture. Zuleika realized that starting a jewelry business, Mazari, inspired by these original pieces, could educate and benefit everyone involved, especially other women. Zuleika, welcome here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. This is a really important conversation, and I'm very honored that you asked me to be interviewed today.
Absolutely. I always ask each artist in this particular short series what it's like to live in your country. I want to really hear, tell me about what Afghanistan is like. Tell me about the landscape and what the weather is like. I think there's a lot of people out there that just don't even know those very simple, basic things.
Yeah, well, most of my life, actually, I wondered what it was like to live in Afghanistan, because when we fled, I was very young. I think I was 2.5 or 3 years old. So most of my life growing up in the US, I always wondered, what is Afghanistan really like? And I would hear stories from my grandma Mazari and from my parents, my mom and my dad, telling me about what wonderful lives they had running around in their yards, picking apples from the apple trees in their yards, and just eating fruit fresh from their own gardens. And I always longed to be in Afghanistan, but because we came to the US due to the war, it was never safe enough for me to travel while I was growing up. And in fact, I didn't know if I would ever actually have a chance to go back to the land on which I was born, the land where my ancestors were from, and which meant so much to me. And then after 2001, when the US went back into Afghanistan due to the conflict with the Taliban after September 11th, the US, and not to take all of this time to go into the politics behind why the US went back in, but they went in to basically take the Taliban out of power and to, in their words, help instill a new democratic government that could help develop the country and take it forward. That was the first time that I actually thought, oh, maybe I can go back. Maybe it would be safe for me to go back, because now the fighting has stopped. Up until that point, there had been different iterations of fighting, first with the Soviets, and then there was a civil war, and then the Taliban took over, but there were still groups that were trying to fight against the Taliban so that they could be in power. In any case, when the US came in, there was a period of stability so people could go back. And for me, my whole life, my dream had been to go back to Afghanistan. So I had studied economics and international development with the hope that one day I would be able to go back and I would help develop and rebuild the country from all of the war and destruction that had gone on for the past 2 decades.
That's incredible.
So when I first went back to Afghanistan, it was actually August of 2002 was when I first stepped foot in the country again. And let me tell you, the period of time, the 2 weeks in between when I found out I was going to go and when I actually landed in country were the most exciting or anticipatory 2 weeks of my life. I couldn't believe that I would be able to go back and actually touch the soil, actually breathe the air. I get so emotional talking about it now because at that point, the airport wasn't fully functioning and we had to take small planes from Peshawar, Pakistan, that the UN was charter planes that they were running. We had to take those planes into Kabul. So coming in on that small little plane with, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 other people in the plane, and being, my whole life waiting for this moment and seeing the mountains, seeing, the landscape get bigger and bigger as the plane was going, further and further to the ground, and seeing just all of this vast land. At that point, Afghanistan was in the middle of a drought. There had been a lot of deforestation. So when I imagined Afghanistan in my mind, I had imagined mountains and trees and rivers. But what I saw was a lot of sand, a lot of brown, a lot of dust, because of the more than 2 decades of war and conflict and devastation leading, the deforestation that had happened both on purpose and because of the droughts, all of this stuff. I was trying to take it all in. And, finally the plane landed. Finally, I got off the plane. I, walked down the short little stairs off the plane, and just the air hitting me in the face was a feeling I will never forget. I finally felt in my heart that I was home. And so that's what Afghanistan means to me. It means a feeling of home, a feeling of belonging. And since then, since August of 2002, up until, the last time I was in Afghanistan was September of 2019. That's when I came back from my last assignment there. So for those, 17 years, I was going back and forth. And every time I came, I got off of that plane. Every time I got off of that plane and put my feet on the ground, I felt that wave of being home, of belonging. And I think that's a feeling that you get because your ancestors having been there, you having been, having these roots and having been born there and having just generational existence in a land that gets imprinted in you through, all of not just the genes, but the memories, the stories,
Absolutely.
everything. So, lots of people might look at Afghanistan from the outside and think it's such a poor country. There's so much war. There's so much devastation. There's, rudimentary things that we take for granted here in the US. We don't have not everybody has in Afghanistan, but still that feeling of, this is my land, and that pride and that just feeling of belonging is something that I can't experience anywhere else.
I completely understand, and what a great story, because truthfully, everyone's either an immigrant or a refugee. There are very few indigenous people here in the United States, and there's always going to be a feeling of belonging or lack thereof. And when you connect with that ability to belong, it is such a powerful experience. And I have had that myself, and I understand it completely. And it's a beautiful thing to hear, because I want people to know how dear and how beautiful and how meaningful Afghanistan is to you and how it influences your life and everything that you do. It's extremely relevant.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, being an Afghan American woman growing up here in the US, always longing to go back home, then having the opportunity to go back and, being able to travel and to live in the country where I was born, Afghanistan. And then also my second home, I love living in the US as well. So much of who I am is shaped by my having grown up here. So, melding both of that, but part of the mission of Mazari really was to shine light on the beauty and the richness and the depth of Afghan culture, because so many times there is just this focus on all of the death and destruction and negativity,
Right.
because that's what has happened in the last 40 years, right? 40 plus years, there's been all of this conflict, and that's gotten the majority of attention. But Afghan culture spans thousands of years.
Right.
Afghan culture is so rich and so deep, and you can see it in the face of a child in Afghanistan, just seeing all of the different ethnicities and the people that went through this land and helped make it as rich as it is. You can see it in the landscape. You can see it in the symbols that people use to adorn their homes. You can see it in the carpets. You can see it in the clothing, and you can see it in the jewelry. And because jewelry was so impactful in my life, it was the only tangible thing that I had access to growing up, when I didn't really know that, I would be able to go back. I would actually be able to see, buildings and historical monuments and just areas that I didn't know whether I would have access to. But growing up here in the US, I did have access to this tangible thing, this very deeply meaningful thing, jewelry, which my grandma Mazari brought with her because she thought it was so important for us to have and to be able to call back to it. So I think it's so important to have these conversations, because design is not just based on the aesthetics of what you're trying to present, but it's also the meaning behind, those shapes and those forms, and just this sense that you're trying to convey through those tangible vessels is something that I think transcends just a literal interpretation or a literal understanding of a culture or a history.
Absolutely. And I think what I am the most fond of is that seeing the beauty and taking that beauty and turning it into something that is tangible, even if it might not be perfectly beautiful to everyone. Bringing that beauty about literally is a life-changing, culture-changing. It's an act, it's a political act in a certain way, to demand that the beauty of a culture be recognized
And not be forgotten.
and not be forgotten.
That's a large
so
part of
important.
it. There's so much focus on the difficulty in the country right now, which is immense. I mean, when I sit and I think about it, and I think about the colleagues that I've worked with over the last 2 decades who are still in the country, I think about the women I've worked with on women's rights issues. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I studied economics and international development, but then I went to law school so that I could work on human rights issues in the country and help build up the legal system of the country. So the majority of work I did was focused on democracy and governance, focused on women's legal rights. And those colleagues I had that worked on those issues are the ones that are most at risk. So my heart, I understand the gravity of the difficulty of what they're going through and what they're living through right now. But when I started Mazari, before the Taliban took over the government for the second time, in August of 2021, the purpose was to shine a light on the positivity and to present another facet of Afghanistan and Afghan culture and Afghan people. And that hasn't changed with the fall of the previous government. And even though we're no longer Afghans are no longer able to have the same freedoms that they did, 3 years ago. Even though Afghans are living in a completely different regime where their rights are being actively suppressed, in very extreme ways, it's still important to remember the whole of Afghanistan and Afghan culture and not let it be eroded or washed away or broken just by current political power in place right now. So for me, it is an act of political rebellion. It's an act of just standing with my people and a human right for us to preserve our culture and to be able to develop our culture in the way that we as Afghans see fit. I mean, I think that's something that is very important for Afghan diaspora right now, who are no longer able to be in their country and work towards development in a safe manner. We are still active from the outside.
Yeah, and I think that I just think that's the power of jewelry. I think that jewelry has that talismanic power to transform energy from maybe something that does have a negative connotation to something that has a celebration about culture and the memory of all the beautiful things that came to make us all here. And I'm just fascinated with that part of the jewelry making process. What is it like to be a jewelry designer in the United States here for you now? And how do you manage your day as a businesswoman? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so so I live in California, and a lot of the people that I work with are in different places. So I think part of working in the jewelry industry is being able to manage working with different time zones, different countries. For me in particular, because Mazzari is a responsible jewelry company, all of our materials are responsibly sourced. I care very much about where the materials come from and what kind of impact they're having on the people who are involved in mining, for instance. So mining the gold, mining the gemstones, that's very important, and it's baked into the ethos of the brand. I mean, it's part of our purpose and part of our mission, and being from a country which is so rich in natural resources. I mean, originally the plan was to be able to source the gemstones from Afghanistan. Right. Now that's not possible currently. Hopefully it will be again in the future. But so part of my mission is to be able to source in a way that's helping improve people's lives and not impact them detrimentally, because I believe, we can make a positive impact through the things that we're doing. So a lot of my focus really and a lot of my time is spent on ensuring that the materials I'm sourcing are sourced responsibly, that people are paid equitably, that people are treated fairly, that health and safety standards are kept and that are followed through. And I work with a very small handful of source suppliers that I've been communicating with for the last 2.5, 3 years now. I built strong relationships with them even before I launched Mazzari in 2021, and have increasingly strengthened those ties because I know that their materials are actually helping improve people's lives. I made sure that, it's Fairmine certified. So a day-to-day for me, is definitely looking at what's on the table in terms of what new custom orders I'm working on. That's something that's really taken up a lot of my business, because I think people feel that inherent connection to the symbols and the motifs that I use in the pieces that I make.
I do. I absolutely love your work. I think it's just fantastic. I aspire to have something someday. I absolutely.
It would be an absolute honor, Linda. It would be an absolute honor, and I cannot wait to make a piece for you. But that's been one of the joyful surprises, is that so many people really resonate with the designs, and really want to have a piece for themselves, but that has also this particular unique tie with them. So they want to either use gemstones that are meaningful to them, or that, represent their birth months, or they want to select symbols or motifs from the collection that have a personal meaning for them. So I do a lot of custom work. Usually I'll have, 1 or 2 custom calls a day, which will evolving a design, which is really special and meaningful to me. But yeah, it's a very fluid process. It's very much in flow. Like, none of my days look exactly the same. I have certain days where I just focus on design, and I just focus on thoughts and feelings that I've had within me that have been like waiting to come out into different designs. And then I'll just give myself the day with a sketch pad and with my colored pencils, and I'll just like get to work on some new sketches. And some of those things, won't launch for a really long time because they're part of this idea or this thing that isn't really ready to be born right now. But I just try to get it all out so that I can see how things will evolve. So yeah, I have a lot of different tasks to work on, but it's always really interesting and exciting. And part of the process that I love so much is connecting with all the different folks.
Absolutely. And I think the process is so much a part of the journey, and the process doesn't always have a set time or a set style. And there has to be some space, there has to be some room to be able to just dream.
I love that part so much, because my previous days were very much routine, were very much focused on deadlines. I mean, I had to make sure that the clients I was representing were being advocated for properly. I had to make sure that, any legal documents met their required time deadlines. It was very much using my logical mind. So now that I'm getting to express more of this artistic side of myself that has always been present, it's just really a joy. It's really nice to be able to have more of, that collaborative process in creating my pieces.
That's such a beautiful way to work. What would you like to see as change around the world for women in this industry, or just in general? Where do you think we really need to focus our efforts and put our attention on?
Oh man, that is such a big question, Linda. And there's so many different areas where I think that, women have made great strides and continue to make great strides. And if I'm, thinking in terms of subject matter, what's most important for women, there's so many different things. There's education, there's access to resources, there's access to income opportunities. I mean, on a grand scale, there's a lot that needs to be done. It's not just one thing, because everything is interconnected. And also, it's not just women, it's also men. A lot of the work that I did in development and in the human rights work is that you're advocating for groups who have traditionally not had their rights respected, and who have not traditionally had access to the rights. Either they haven't been the rights haven't been recognized, or they haven't had access to the rights. Like, those are two of the main issues. But you can't just work within the context of women. It has to also be men who are educated in knowing what the benefit is to all of society, right? So it's been proven time and time and time again that when women have more access to resources, when women have more access to income, it doesn't just help improve the lives of women, it helps improve the lives of everybody in society, because women have a tendency to spend those resources or that income not just on themselves, but also on their children, also on their husbands, also on their greater families, and to make investments into their communities. So it leads to more sustainable development just across the board.
Absolutely.
But bringing it down to the, jewelry industry, or bringing it back to, I guess, some of the things that we can do tangibly, I think really supporting women who are in the sector. I mean, that's one of the biggest priorities for Mazzari, is working with women miners, working with women gem suppliers, working with other women businesses to the extent that we can, because it is really important not just to reinvest, but to help build this new cadre of folks who then can go and advocate for themselves and their communities on a more equal platform, so that they know, for instance, if you're working with women who are minors and you are paying them at a rate that is equal or fair, to what they should be getting, as opposed to trying to undercut them and paying them lower rates, because oftentimes there aren't as many women miners as men miners in many societies throughout the world. And so the women don't have as much knowledge about, the prices that they should be selling their stones at, or what the stones are. I mean, this is just a very micro level thing that I'm trying to explain. But as jewelers, particularly women jewelers, if we emphasize working with women miners and we go the extra steps, even though it may be harder, it may be harder to find those suppliers who source from women miners. It might be harder to find calibrated stones. It might be harder to find, the exact qualities you're looking for, but maybe investing a little bit more in that, taking the time, putting in the effort to actually do that, is going to help make substantial changes, particularly in the long run, that are important not only for the industry, but for their lives and their societies. And it's, that whole ripple effect. So I don't think I'm saying anything new, but it's just this constant reinforcement that you really do have to take everything into consideration in order to be, adding to positive change and not status quo, or not, adversely impacting people, which unfortunately is the way the industry has been for a long, portion of its history.
I think it's really important to state here that we don't want to go backwards.
No.
And this is the future. And women are the future, and people, indigenous people, people of color, everybody. That is the future of all these businesses. And we need to be more inclusive. And if there's any trend forecasting to be done, that's what it is encouraging families and cultures to be able to take care of everybody around them. And as you say, everyone benefits from that at that moment. What are your suggestions for emerging designers based on your cultural experiences? What advantages do you enjoy coming from being an Afghani woman? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, being an Afghan woman, I think is really, for me, it's part of the purpose of my brand. It's just so rooted in my identity as an Afghan woman, as a refugee, as a human rights attorney, as a person who's had all of these different experiences. I channel it into my designs. And I think that would be my biggest recommendation, or I don't know, just what I would encourage all emerging designers to do is really put themselves into their work. I know that, all designers are doing that anyways, whether they're conscious of it or not, because part of the reason, behind creating art, part of the impetus for it, or the inspiration for it, is yourself and your background. But oftentimes, I think particularly for cultural minorities or ethnic minorities, they think, oh, my pieces, they shouldn't look too ethnic, or they shouldn't look too different, or maybe, in order to make sales, they need to look a certain way that society looks. But I think that that is not as interesting or as important as actually expressing what is inherent inside of you. And so I would say not only to lean into that, but just to be that, to be, to have your pieces be an accurate reflection of you, because that's the beauty that you're putting out into the world. And I promise you will find the people that you resonate with. They exist, they're out there. And you don't need to dim your light for that. You don't need to second guess yourself. You don't need to question. You just need to have that faith that, this is why you have the desire within you to create these pieces. It's because there are people out there who are going to resonate with those designs and who need you to create those designs. So that would be, I guess, my little piece of advice.
What are some problem-solving techniques you use when you encounter any difficulties? When you come up against an obstacle, can you give us some pointers about what it's like for you to supersede those obstacles? And maybe you have some insight for somebody who might be encountering something similar?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in collaboration and in discussion and in just, brainstorming. And the jewelry industry, particularly as a designer, can be a bit isolating because you're working on your own for so much of the day. You're working on your designs or you're working with a client, but you're not necessarily working with other jewelry designers on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it's been really important to have those connections with mentors and with colleagues that I trust and that I've built strong relationships with. And if I encounter difficulties, I really rely on them to talk it out with me, because the industry is so small and it's unlike other industries. And so you don't necessarily have the tools coming right into it to know how to deal with each issue that you're going to face. And just, generally, I learned that when I was practicing law, I learned that, just in my life in general, it's always helpful to communicate and collaborate with other folks because you get new ideas. And, it's always beneficial to kind of take a look at all of the different options.
One of the things that I started the book regarding was I felt very lonely. And I just thought to myself, am I the only woman going through this? And creating a community was probably the most beautiful part of this project for me, and finding a lot of solace in that community and knowing that there are people out there that can definitely step in and help and be supportive when you really need it. So I think that's a really, really excellent answer. What would you like us to know about you and your work? This is an opportunity to showcase your philosophy and your perspectives in this industry. I'd like to know what your handle is for Instagram for everybody to know. And I also want to be able to showcase whatever philosophy you have for this industry to the world who's watching right now.
Well, I believe that my philosophy and my ethos is really baked into the brand. I believe in making a positive impact through whatever type of work that you do. And so that's how I choose to pursue Mazzari. Everything that I do, I always think, who is this impacting and how is it impacting them? Is it making a positive impact? Is it making a detrimental impact? If so, how can we mitigate against that? I don't want my actions to be causing difficulty, hurt, detriment to anyone. So I think that's my general philosophy in life, is not harming and trying to help, or maybe more than help is trying to add something to somebody's life or add something to the world. And so, I really try to live and breathe that for Mazzari and for myself in general. And yeah, I'm really excited about people discovering Mazzari, learning more about us. We're really new, just launched in 2021. So your project was, the very first project of this kind that I had the honor of being a part of. And, it's just been so amazing to see the development of the book and to be part of the community that you've built. And I'm really proud and honored to be part of this community of other women jewelers. On Instagram, our handle is @Mazzari, and the website's mazzari.com. And there's lots of exciting things happening right now with the brand. So I'm just really excited about seeing how everything develops and just, taking this ride on further.
Thank you so much today for your insights. I cannot wait to air this. Your words and perspective are so important. I think a lot of people in the industry, there's a mentality that it's just product, that it's just this rote manufacturing. And what I find with all the women is they bring a much deeper meaning, a much more intuitive and divine interpretation of something that could be very rote, very cold. And I thank you for your participation, not only in the book, but being one of the 5 women from the 4 corners of the earth. Thank you so much today, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you.
This has been great, and I will be in touch.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Today, I am introducing to you Silvia Firmanovic from Brazil. Silvia is considered to be one of the great jewelry innovators of our time. She incorporates non-traditional materials into her designs, including Brazilian hardwoods, marquetry, detailed hand painting, and exquisite gemstones. Her designs are then hand manufactured with high carat gold into exquisitely detailed pieces. Her work challenges your senses, yet honors the tradition of several cultural references. Silvia is committed to giving back to her communities that create her work. The number of individuals needed to produce each piece is significant. The jewelry that contains marquetry is done by several artisans who painstakingly prepare the ultra-thin layers of wood. There are several metalsmiths and gem cutters who contribute to the process. Every person's work has to be perfect, and all the components must work perfectly together. Every one of her designs is a unique piece. Silvia, thank you for joining us here today. I truly appreciate it. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much to be invited for the interview. And I'm very honored to be in your book. And I'm very curious to read it. I hope I read it soon. So I'm very happy to be here talking with you this morning.
Thank you so much. My first question to every artist is, what is it like to live in your country? Describe what Brazil is like and where in Brazil you live. And what do you love the most? Tell us a little bit about your home.
Okay, I'm from Brazil, specifically from São Paulo. It's a big city like New York. And I was born here and I lived all my life here. So all my roots are here in Brazil. I love my country. It's a huge country with lots of places like nature and diversity, the Amazonia. So I'm very attached to those roots because this comes like the essence of my work in working with the Brazilian artisans. I work with all over the artisans from all over the world, but my heart is here. You know what I mean? That I love to promote the work of the Brazilian artisans mainly. I have been working with them for the last 10 years. I have my brand since the year 2000. And I'm very attached to this marquetry work, which is made in Amazonia. So I travel to this place every 3 or 4 months, stayed there for around 10 days. So this is what gives me an impulse, you know, to keep on working with those Brazilian roots, you know. So I'm very happy where I am, because I don't have an experience to have lived in another country. You know, I always live it here, so I'm very attached to my job here.
Absolutely. And I think that's relevant to every artist, that their environment really does nurture and influence their work. I am a little curious about gemstones. You must have access to the most amazing gems in the world.
Yes.
How is that?
It's very interesting, because Brazil is very rich in stones in many parts, different parts of Brazil. We have, like, for instance, mines in Piauí, in the north of Brazil, where there is like an opal mine that nobody knows about it, but it's very nice, you know. And there is, like, in Minas Gerais, a very Cruzeiro mine. It's like a mine where we find the most beautiful stones, like Brazilian stones, like amethysts, like tourmalines, mainly tourmalines.
Mm-hmm.
We have the famous aquamarine is from Brazil. The Paraíba tourmaline, we have a mine that you cannot find so much anymore, because it finished. You know, it was already found and sold, everything. So we are very rich in those. So I have this advantage of Brazilians, the variety of Brazilian stones, which is very nice, from all over Brazil, even diamonds.
And as I look at your work, the carvings are extraordinary, and the gemstone carvings in your work are extraordinary.
Yeah,
I
yes.
just love everything you do, and you're a great inspiration because of your willingness to challenge what I consider to be the boundaries of materials. And I feel this is very important for everyone to know about, that there are no rules, and you can.
No, not at all. Sometimes I feel myself, am I crazy? But I think when I believe in those projects, those are the ones that goes very well, you know. But it's a big challenge, because I decided to run my business to this direction, you know, not only working with precious stones and golds and precious metals. So I like this mixture, you know. Of course, the gold is important, because it's a very durable material. It's a wonderful material to work with, but it's not the most important for me. For me, the most important thing is to know that this piece was made by somebody that has the skill to do it. You know, like you said that you like my carvings. I have like 3 artists that works in my office, that they make the carvings, and that they are really artisans, artists.
Mm-hmm.
That it takes a long time. It's a project that we study together. It's a challenge for both of us when I present some idea that he had never made. So I think this what I like in my work, you know, the process of doing. When the piece is ready, of course, it's wonderful. But it's not the most important for me. For me, the important is the development of all those stages in each piece, you know, like, for instance, this year I introduced it in my work, lacquerware from Japan. So I visit Japan many times to find the best artisans in lacquerware, and I found in Wajima. It's a city in Japan. It's like a fisherman city, but they have the most skilled artisans I have ever seen. So that's my challenge, you know, to have those things and mix it with Brazilian stones or with the gold, with the diamonds. So the mixture is what attracts me most, you know, the mixture of cultures, because it is always interpreted like in a Brazilian way in terms of colors to represent nature. So I like to make this relationship with the artisan, you know.
Yes.
That's what I like to do.
I think it's a strong signature in your work, and it can be perceived in the work. What's it like to be a jewelry designer in your country? A little bit more on that. And how do you manage your day as a businesswoman? I mean, how does each day look? Is there different things, a different agenda? Tell me a little bit about that part of it.
Well, to be a jewelry designer in Brazil, it's good because we have many resources. We have like hand labor here, which is not ideal because the people nowadays, they don't want to stay a lot of time in a bench with patients, and everybody wants like quick things nowadays. So
Right.
I think we have those people still in Brazil that are very skilled. So it's a good place to be like a jewelry designer, Brazil. Mainly women, because we have many women that are designers here in Brazil. So it's an open country. So the people is very, very nice. We have a team here at the office that is amazing. That's like a family that we work all the departments together, and it's nice. And my day by day, I live for my work. I work all the time. If I'm not here, I'm traveling. For the last 3 years, I have been traveling a lot, like every month. So I stay like half of the month here in Brazil, and half of the month I'm traveling or launching the collections or making a research in a country or exploring a new technique. So I travel a lot. I like it very much to travel because this is not an exchange of cultures. And when I arrive here and I have like all the ideas, so I stayed in my atelier, which is a very nice place, very near my house. So I'm always here with the goldsmith, with the people that makes my ideas come true. We work as a team. I don't work alone. I'm always surrounded by like a very skilled team to develop any project. So it's this work is inside my heart. This is what I decided to be in my life, and I'm very happy that this trajectory of 20 years in my work, so I can be recognized as an artist, which I'm very proud of because it's a lot of work. I work endlessly. But I love it. This is what it's important to communicate, it's not a burden for me, on the opposite. It's my passion. Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see change around the world for women in any industry? What do you see? What are some of your observations, especially being a world traveler and seeing various cultures and how they manufacture and what the artisans do? Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are for women.
Yes, this is a question that I'm always being asked about the role of a woman in the world. I think, like in many professions, I think the woman it's being seen, nowadays. But even nowadays, we find some restrictions. I mean, in traveling, because for instance, the community miniature painting, that the artisans are only men. This is something in the majority of the marketry too in Amazonia, like 70% are the artisans are men.
Right.
I think there are a lot, the path is long, we have to conquer this space more and more, I think, but I never found like a restriction in my career because I'm a woman, But sometimes I notice this, that
Right.
the woman has to to conquer more space, you know.
Right.
Mm.
Absolutely. What are your suggestions that you would give to emerging designers at this time? And what can you say in reference to emerging designers in Brazil, the cultural development of young women and men designers? What advice would you give to them? What do you think is valuable for the next generation of designers to know?
I think for the young designer, first of all, they have to love what they are doing. You know, that you have to have this passion, because in jewelry it's like a desire, you know, an inner desire to keep on going. Because we found many obstacles also during this process. So you have to be passionate about what you do, because this is what is going to maintain in the bad times, you know. Because I can tell you, like in all my trajectory, I faced many obstacles. If I didn't love what I was doing, I would have gave up, you know. But I think this is the first thing, to be passionate and to believe what you are doing and not be afraid, you know, to dare of using another kind of material, to think outside the box, because I think it's very important, because we are in a globalized world. Everything is everything you can see in the internet, in the social media, everything is open, you know. So and you have to be innovative even in this. It's hard to maintain a business, because you make a collection. It doesn't mean the next collection is going to be a success as this one. So all the time you have to be innovating yourself and to do different things that nobody did before. This is very hard, because everybody did everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you make researches in books, in pictures, you see everything is done, that you have to innovate always, to so your business can be fresh, and think outside of the box, you know. Not if you have something ready, how can you change it to be a little bit special, more special? Have a criteria of ideas, of patience. You have to have a lot of patience, because sometimes you create a piece of jewelry today and you can sell this years after. So this is a risk that we take all the time, you know, to invest in a piece with a stone, a very special stone, and you have to maintain the business in the other way. So it's a challenge, but I think if you have this passion, you overcome all those situations, you know.
And that's a perfect segue, because I like to ask each artist, how do you process when you come up against an obstacle, which, as you've indicated, there are many, and I've certainly encountered them myself. What's your process? What would you suggest to try to surmount that obstacle, like a technique?
Well, I think the only certainty we have in life, that everything changes. So if you encounter yourself in a situation that it's an obstacle, that is difficult, it seems that it's going to finish everything, you have to wait, you know, wait. You have to retrieve yourself and be patient and wait, because with the time, you know, the things change and you can overcome. You can think better, not to think like with an impulse to change right now. You have to have patience. I think patience is and time is the best teacher, you know, because everything changes, and if you keep on walking, you are going to get there, you know. And for me, it's not a question of to get somewhere. I think I'm already here. So I think I'm grateful today. So we don't never know the future. Now the future is so uncertain that you have to live the present moment, and take the most advantage of the present moment to, because you cannot make very long plans, long-term plans, because everything changes, so you have to be like a resilience to deal with this. And this you get only with patience, with beliefs. Now, what you're doing is the right path. So I think you overcome the obstacle.
I love that. And the reason I'm smiling is because no one thought I could pull this book off either. And I that is true. It did take just about 8 years. And I'm just smiling because that's exactly how I had to approach this project, is that I could do it and I could fulfill it, and I had the ability to do it. But there were many times that I definitely
many
did
obstacles,
not have that confidence.
almost 10 years, so you have to have patience, because the thing doesn't happen immediately.
And the fact that it got done. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'd
Yeah.
like to know about, tell me, what would you like me to know about your work? What would you like the world to know about your work? And showcase your philosophy and perspectives in this industry. Tell us about you, Sylvia.
Well, I passed through many phases in my work. I started my work to survive, and to survive my whole family when I began. So this was one target that I have. I had to survive. I have to do something that would bring me resources. So then it changes with age. It changes with the phases of the life. And now I'm looking my work from now to the future. So I want to live like something I can be proud of, not in terms of only doing and selling and have the money back. So I want to invest my resources from now on, like in causes where I can make like a difference, where I can make a help, like a community, like socially speaking, more than sustainability. I think socially, the people who is involved in my web gets a better life, because they have work, they have creativity, they can develop themselves. So I can make this happen through me, through my works, through my art. And I think this is the most important thing for me to have, for instance, like if I work in Amazonia, I'm always there. So I can help something to do in Amazonia, like a project that is gonna be beneficial for everybody, not only me and my company. So this is my aim from now on. First of all, to have like a community of artisans from different parts of the world. I think this mixture of culture is very important for the people to know the other country and the other way around. And that this together, the more people I can together to have a better life, a better opportunity in life, to help, giving them jobs and works, and to work as a group, like a community.
I think that's so beautiful. And I think in many instances, that's the woman's way, is to create a family, to create a group of people to work with, and then take care of them through fostering their capabilities, as well as nurturing the people that you work with. I think that's just is honorable. And it has, to me, it brings so much more inherent value to the work, because when a person purchases that work, they can feel all that and know that their money is going to someplace really special, and that people were supported. And I think that is a huge piece of what I'm seeing in terms of the future in terms of sustainability, but also support. I think that's
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Yeah.
You can see Sylvia's work at www.sylviafermanovich.com, and you can follow her at Sylvia Fermanovich. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for taking your time with me
Thank
today.
you.
I couldn't
Thank
be
you.
more pleased. And you are truly an inspiration to everyone in the industry. And it is truly an honor to be able to speak with you today and for you to share your ideas and really teach the next generation and all the people that are in this industry how to do good and still feel good. It's just
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. And I see you in New York next
Oh
week.
yeah, that sounds good.
We are in 15 days, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Today's guest is Denise Wallace. Denise was born in Seattle and now lives in Hawaii. Her work is strongly rooted in her ancestral heritage. Denise hand carves, fabricates, and inlays all of the pieces herself at the bench. She selects traditional materials to use like agates, lapis for her inlay, and fossilized walrus ivory for her scrimshaw. She is a member of the Alutiiq Sujpayak Native American tribes, one of 8 Alaska Native peoples. Denise, thank you so much for joining us here today. We are thrilled to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
You look fantastic, by the way.
Thanks.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. My intention with this, and we've talked a little bit about this, is to really have people understand what it's like to be a woman and designer all over the world. So my first question is, what is it like to live in Hawaii? Give me a description, please, of what you love the most. And this can be anything from the weather to the landscape. Tell me a little bit about what your life is like. We'd all like to hear. Thank you.
Well, the life in Hawaii is quite lovely. I live in a very rural area, and so it's mostly pasture land that we live around, and we have acreage here. So right now I'm looking out over the Pacific Ocean beyond the computer, and so it's a really idyllic, but also not the same as what a lot of people think of Hawaii as being. You know, they think of it as vacation and all those things. And yes, we do have those things, but living here is a whole different kind of situation for us. And but it's a wonderful place to live.
And I hope your family was safe from the fires. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are on a different island, and so the fires were on Maui, which actually I can see Maui usually from my lanai here if I look up, but we're very separated. And we had some fires on our island at the same time, as well as some strong winds, which is what helped aggravate the fires, especially in Lahaina. And the people there are still suffering terribly over their losses. And so
I'm very sorry to hear that. We
yeah,
have suffered a lot of loss here in Boulder, Colorado as well with fires, so we can totally relate to that.
yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you are safe and your family is safe.
We are.
What is it like for you on a daily basis to be a jewelry designer? How do you manage that day? Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like for you as an independent businesswoman? I just know personally, and you can correct me at any time, I know you do a few shows a year, so there's a lot of work, and then you get to these shows, which is even more work. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and tell our audience what it's like for you?
Sure. It's generally my life as a jeweler has spanned over 40 years. And so it has changed quite a bit in that period of time. There was probably about 20 years of my life where I was really hustling, and I had a studio showroom, and I had people working with me, helping to create the work. And I had worked with many galleries, so they were marketing the work as well. I would send the work to them, and they would, help promote it. And so that was a whole period of time that now is kind of behind me. And when I moved here to Hawaii, which has been about 20 years, first of all, I've been in business with my husband, and he was my partner for many years, and all during that time. And then we raised 2 children in the business. So they learned all of the techniques and everything as well. And I am the designer and the fabricator of the metal. My husband and now my son does the inlay work. They do the carving of the ivory, and then I do the scrimshaw or the detail work. But basically, I'm the designer, and their work enhances what I do. And I say, my daughter also is a jeweler, so she does the same thing as me. She designs it and fabricates the metal. And then my son now does the lapidary for both her and I, because my husband passed away about 13 years ago. So
I'm very sorry to hear that, and that breaks my heart. It's got to be hard to lose your partner, and I understand what that might be like. I work with my partner, Tom, as well, and he does a lot of the work for the business, and I can't imagine what it was like, thank goodness, for the kids to have to process all of that and keep working to take care of the family. Do you start working every day and go to the studio? I know you have a studio on site. What does that look like for you?
No, generally not. That's what I was kind of getting at, was that in my, during that 20, I'm going to say 20 years, but it was give or take more, most likely more than 20 years. I did go to the studio every day, and I worked on designing, and I had 2 lines of jewelry going, which was what I call my gallery line. And then I also had my fabricated line, or my more exclusive line. So I was constantly designing and fabricating pieces for this line, and helping it, that whole process, keep rolling. Because as a designer, you have to come up with new designs every year or every couple of years, depending on how each designer sees their, I mean, everybody likes to come out with new pieces so that people have something new to collect. So I was doing that for many years. And then once after my husband passed away, and we moved over here. I've been over here in Hawaii for about 20 years, but prior to that, we were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with our studio there. I kind of slowed down a little bit. And then I started just doing shows, selective shows at some galleries or museum shops around the country. And I've continued on that path. So I'd say I do maybe 2 to 4 major shows every year. And so therefore, I don't go out into my studio every day. I do a variety of things to keep that ball rolling. And before my shows, I'm in my studio every day. For 2 months before a show, I'm working solid. And that means I neglect other things, around my house and stuff and the property. And, but I also, do a lot of my own marketing as well. And I put out my own emails, and I put out, I'm trying to update my website now, which is, challenging, because I don't do it all the time. So it takes me time to kind of figure out what I'm doing again. how to operate these systems and load the pictures, and then you've got to put all the content in and all that. So it's very time consuming, and
Yes.
so basically, I'm speaking for myself, but I know my daughter does the same thing. We basically wear all the hats with what we do. We don't have anybody doing that work for us.
I have talked to so many women that feel the same way. And a lot of it is just feeling like you're the only one who knows intimately how you want to present your work, how you feel about your work, and how you put your work out to the world. So managing that social media, it's a lot of work, and it's a
It is.
very overwhelming task.
Yes, and when I did have other people working for me, they were actually really good at it, although social media wasn't a big thing at that point. It was just starting with the computer and putting things on a website, and making things more available to people at a distance as opposed to walking into your shop space. And certainly now it is a huge deal. Things have drastically changed. A lot of people look to social media and to websites, even though websites are a little bit, it's like social media. People look at that every day, several times a day.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they're going to go to your website every day,
That's right.
So
Yeah.
social media has played a big part in it all. And that's a fairly easy platform to use for, I think, myself and probably other people, because they've made it very easy to just upload your photographs and your content. And people put videos of their work and what they're doing, process. It's really a wonderful a tool for all of us.
And your Instagram account is at Denise, sorry, Denise
it's
Wallace
Denise Wallace
Jewelry.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Right.
wanted to make sure, because sometimes you refer to the personal account, and the jewelry or professional account is a different account.
Yes.
What would you like to see change around the world for women in this industry? Are there things that you feel could be better dealt with and better done? Do you have any insight on that for your audience, for our
Well, I
audience
think
today?
that it's important to understand my perspective on that, because I'm not necessarily going to have the same perspective as maybe another jewelry designer out there, female jewelry designer. I think that my perspective is that I am really a part of a large network of Indigenous artists. And so many of the shows that I go to, and many of the gatherings that I'm involved with, are dealing with other Indigenous artists and other craftspeople, not just jewelers.
Right.
And so what I see in my period of time of doing jewelry is that we do have a lot more male jewelers out there, even in our community, in our Indigenous communities. And there is a bit of that kind of, buddy system, or guys getting together and doing things together and stuff. I see less females in that arena. I always have, and I don't think it's changed any. So I would like to see more activities that, women supporting other women, and and I see that outside of our area, or of our arena of
Yes.
Indigenous artists. I see some women doing some really great things within the jewelry community in the States. And so it's just nice. I think that's it really important. If you have women that are kind of leading it, then you're going to have more women involved in it.
Absolutely. And I do believe that more women involved will just give a better overview for everybody But I also think that having your daughter work for you is a great way to stimulate that type of expansion and keeping it within the family, and also expanding it into the realm of more women. I think you
Yeah.
have grandchildren. Is that
Yes, I
correct?
do. I have grandchildren as well. So my daughter does not work for me. She works on her own. She is her own designer,
Right.
she takes care of all of her own marketing, and her communications with her clients. It's a very separate situation, except that what we do together is we will go to the same shows. So we travel together. We are able to, you know, share expenses and keep each other company for these shows and exhibitions that we do. And so I just wanted to make that clear that
Yeah.
she's very independent of me with her designs and her work. So
Does she have an Instagram account? You're welcome
She
to
does.
share it here. We'd
Yeah.
love to hear what hers is as well.
yes, it's Dawn Wallace Jewelry. I think it's John Wallace. Yeah, Dawn Wallace Jewelry. So
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Well, I just think that even having somebody that you can work with that really understands what you are experiencing can be a very important part of our experience in the entire community. So I think it's great, even though you might not be working in the same studio, you are both working in the same industry,
Right.
and
Right.
I feel that this is a great direction for women, and a great generational shift for women to be working with in the same industry and creating that lineage, even
It's
if
a
it is a
it-
different direction.
yeah. And well, it's the probably the most valuable part of that is that she's independent. She's got a life that really suits her well, and her family. And so she's been doing, she's now 40 and she's been doing this since she was a teenager. So
That's
she
great.
really did, she has been working at this quite a long time. By the time I was 40, I was probably, already 20 years into it too. Well,
Right.
she's over 20 years in it, and has had her parents had been in it before her. So she's didn't have to stumble as much as I did, probably. I'm guessing. She also attended the FIT in New York and the jewelry department. So she learned quite a bit of different techniques and approaches and concepts of being a jeweler from that experience that I never had. So
Yeah, they have, I understand they have a fantastic department, and our second volume, which you are in, is a tribute to one of the teachers there, Professor Yupati Kabkulbunsiri, and who taught at FIT.
oh,
And I feel like it's a wonderful environment for all people. What are your suggestions that you would give to emerging designers based on your cultural experience? What advantages do you enjoy coming from living in Hawaii? Is there any relationship there? Can you discuss that a little bit?
let's see. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. I I think that if I were to give anybody, first of all, my perspective again is quite different because yes, I live in Hawaii, but I'm originally my roots are in Alaska,
Mhm.
and I lived in northern New Mexico for over 20 years, and that's where I trained as a jeweler. So these three places are a big part of my learning, growth, inspiration, and in regards to a young person and what they're going through, I think the most important thing for any jeweler whether they be male, female, whatever, is to learn as much as you can about the industry and technically, like, and what
Yeah.
you want to do. I mean, I remember when I was trying to encourage my daughter to consider being a designer more than a fabricator, just because I had been I'm a fabricator, and
Mhm.
if I don't work, the work doesn't get done. So, so I imagine that she might have that opportunity to be a designer and have other people fabricating for her. And I know that many jewelers do. I mean, you meet people and they say they're a jewelry designer. Well, normally they're not fabricators.
Right.
You know, it's a lot of wear and tear on your hands and your body
It
that you
is.
have to really try and balance your life, as opposed to just sitting at the bench, you know, day after day. So I just think things have changed so much since
Yeah.
I started making jewelry, and I look at some of the things that people are doing, and I don't even know how they make it. You know,
Right.
I mean, I know they're machine cut. You know, I'm still sawing by hand. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I file. I look at people and they're bending bracelets with, you know, machinery, and I'm still hammering mine. You know, I'm just really old school, and I'm not saying that shouldn't be appreciated. I think I appreciate that when I see other people that are doing all this handwork.
I think it's very, very appealing. I do.
If you look at it, you can tell the difference, you know,
Mhm.
and nothing's perfect and things are organic. And but it is challenging. And I think that it's good as a jeweler is just figure out what you really want to do. Do you really want to be a fabricator? If that's the most important thing to you, to actually touch it, make it, and work that metal and those stones and everything by yourself, then do it, because there are plenty of places out there that you can learn these techniques and expand. And you, as you know, in the jewelry field, there's so many techniques. It's just mind-boggling.
It is. I
yeah.
was at the bench for 30 years, but then I found it to be hard on the body, and I felt like I was frustrated. I wasn't able to achieve some of the things that I had hoped, and finding ways to get around that really did expand my business and give me some opportunity to create some ideas and designs that I had wanted. But I still really appreciate a hand fabricated piece of jewelry, and it's very dear, and it is somewhat a vanishing industry.
Yeah, it is. When you think about it, we're rapidly getting into, you know, computer generated and, you know, I can't even speak intelligently about those machines and techniques.
It's
But
going so fast, nobody knows anything about it anymore. Trying to keep up is a very difficult path. It's
right,
because it's changing so rapidly.
and it's hard for these younger people that, you know, our grandchildren, let's just say, to really have an appreciation for handmade things. I think that is where we have to educate them more into the appreciation for things that are handmade, and, you know, so that they don't just assume that things can be quickly produced by machine.
I also think doing things by hand like that teaches you everything, even if you do use some alternative processes. I think it's really important that you still know how to get things done if all the machinery fails, and that you can still produce no matter what.
Yes.
There's a certain freedom in being able to hand fabricate and set stones and that type of thing. What are some problem-solving techniques you use when you encounter any difficulties? Just anything. And I'm more interested in how you process. There's an obstacle in front of you, and now you have to manage it. There's pressure to maybe get work done for a show. what are some techniques that we can share with our audience today that gives them some idea as to how to maybe get beyond those obstacles?
I saw the question and I was like, okay, what's my answer for that? Well, it's pretty simple. I just step away from it for a minute. I just have to, if I'm struggling with something, I have to set it aside. And a lot of times I will have other things that I'm working on at the time. So it doesn't slow me down in my movement forward with my work, but I just sometimes have to let it sit for a day, 2 days, whatever it is, before I can tackle it again, because sometimes you just need to let your brain let go of it. And then you will hopefully be able to come up with the solution to your problem or your
Whatever you're going through. I think that's a really great way of doing something, because I think sometimes banging your head against the wall doesn't always help. And getting some perspective is imperative in some cases. And sometimes the piece maybe even tells the story of how to get to the next. Sometimes when I'm thinking about it, it'll go to the next step because I give it some breathing room, and it has maybe its own ideas of how to be created. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I do think that stepping away is a very important piece of that.
Yeah, and the one of the other challenges that I have sometimes is just getting going, like if I've been out of my studio for a while and I get in there and I'm like going, okay, what am I going to do? I don't have anything that I've started yet. And I find that sometimes the best thing to do is just start off with some simple stuff and just kind of, just like exercise or anything, you just kind of get the momentum going.
Yeah.
Once you get the momentum going, once you get the hands involved and your physical body involved in the process, your body will direct you, and and your mind will follow.
Yeah.
Your mind will start going, okay, now I could do this, and okay, I've got this is helping me sort through what I'm going to produce, what I'm going to make, what I'm going to design next. So
yeah, I think that's great advice. What would you like us to know? I want to showcase you and your work, and what would you like us to know about you and your work? And just tell me a little bit about your philosophy and how you apply that to your work. So when you are in that process and you are going through whatever it is that it takes to get some of those magnificent pieces that you make out into the world, what would you like us to know about you as I introduce you to this entire platform?
well, I would say that I'm very much committed to designing pieces that represent my indigenous culture from Alaska. So I spend a lot of time researching and spending time with people and going to Alaska and being involved with my family and the community up there. And that is a big part of my inspiration. And so I have to feed that inspiration. And I think that, one of the things I've noticed in the jewelry world is that there's not that many pieces that have that human quality about it. That a lot of it is about design, and and it's beautiful. It looks beautiful on the body, and it has the beautiful stones, and it's elegant and everything. But I think what sets my work apart is that it's more of a human story. And
It really is, Denise.
it-
I just love your work so, so much.
well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's a joy to see how it affects other people, because that's the part that you, as a working in your studio, don't always know. And I get affected by my work, you know, but my work doesn't. It's like you're working on it, you're struggling with it, and then when it's finally finished, then you can appreciate what you actually created, because up until then you don't really know. You don't know what it's really going to look like. And but then the next level is how it affects other people and how they see it and how they then become a part of it. So it's really quite an extraordinary journey that I feel I've been fortunate to somehow find. I don't know how. It wasn't in my parents weren't jewelers. I didn't really know anybody that was a jeweler when I was growing up, and I just fell in love with the idea of making jewelry, and then it expanded into what it is today. So it's been a real wonderful journey.
And it holds such great tradition, and it also keeps all those traditions alive and the stories alive. And it is a language, it's a narrative, and your work is absolutely extraordinary. I couldn't say enough about it. I've held it, I've looked at it, and it's complete magic, and it is deeply heartfelt art, in my opinion.
Thank you. It's a wonderful process, and I'm happy to be able to do what I do.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Today's guest is Sheikha Princess Intisar Al Sabah. Her Highness Sheikha Intisar Al Sabah is a princess of the Al Sabah family, the ruling family of Kuwait. She is a philanthropist, entrepreneur, author, film producer, columnist, and most importantly, a jewelry designer. Her primary philanthropic enterprise, the Intisar Foundation, provides psychological support in the form of drama therapy for women, Arab women affected by the war and violence that has troubled the Middle East for such a long time. She is also the founder of two nonprofit organizations, Al Nawayr and Bariak. But for our purposes, we focus on her as the creator of jewelry-centric social enterprises, Intisars and Ibarra Jewelry. Princess Intisar, welcome. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. and I'm a little bit anxious because I am the first of your interviews, so we better make this really brilliant so they continue watching after.
Okay, they will, I promise.
I'm sure.
I had some questions for you today, and I thought that we would like to first hear, what is it like to live in your country? Tell me about anything that comes to your mind. What do you love? What is the landscape, the weather, anything like that? What does it look like to you?
Let me start by quoting, and the words are not exactly the same, an Australian sailor who joined one of the last wooden boats that were around the Gulf area and the world in the 40s. That were, or 30s, were the beginning of the steamboats, and the wooden ships were getting away from favor. And he joined the boat in Africa. And then he came, and so they traveled back. And during his whole trip, they kept telling him, the sailors, how beautiful Kuwait was. So they would get from one port and the other, from one port to the other, and he would say, "This is such a nice port," and he would say, "You have to see Kuwait. You have to see Kuwait. Kuwait's more beautiful." And it took him a couple of months to arrive to Kuwait. And when they were approaching, he could see flat land, desert, no greenery, nothing. And he looked at the sailor, one of the sailors, and he said, "That's flat. There's nothing." And he says, "Of course it has everything. It is our beloved country." So he was shocked that in their eyes, Kuwait was the most beautiful place on earth, much nicer than India, than Africa, than all the other ports and cities they approached. So for me, when you ask me, how's Kuwait? Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. We're a desert, we're small compared to our neighbors and compared to other countries around the world, but we're full of beautiful people, kind people, generous people. Kuwait's known to be the humanitarian country. We are always there to support other countries. What do you think people do on the inside? We're like a big family with different colors, not language is the same, different colors, different dialects, and we all love being in this country. So as I said, Kuwait's small, but it's full of beautiful people. It's a desert. We have quite challenging summers and beautiful springs, autumns, and winters.
That's beautiful. And it is true, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And if it's your country, it's beautiful to you. And it can be beautiful to everybody in the world through your eyes.
Exactly. And I have to admit, I have to add that Kuwait has a nice energy. There's a calming energy. When you come to Kuwait, things just sort of slow down. And people feel it when they come. And I mean, this to me is one of the best parts.
That's lovely. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a jewelry designer in your country, and how do you manage your day as a businesswoman? Tell me a little bit about the process. I know you have a lot of ideas and you have these beautiful pieces that empower women through words. Tell me how that works for you and what you do to create those gorgeous pieces that help other people remember their empowerment.
I will answer the same as I usually answer, because it's the truth, and the truth keeps coming out. I love jewelry. I've always loved stones. I like the energy of stones. I love jewelry. And it dawned on me one day, why can't jewelry have more than just gold or precious metals and precious stones? Why can't jewelry be a form of empowerment? And especially that I have NGOs and we work with affirmations, we work with words, we work with different ways to support students in schools to become more kind to themselves, to have a more positive mindset. And we did a whole course with just affirmations. So they would just wear an affirmation a week. And we saw how the young women changed just with affirmations that they wore on their wrists. And that gave me the idea, why can't jewelry also have words that remind us of what we aspire to become, or what we want to become more of, or what we want to transform into? And that's the whole idea that came. And so we have, with Insars, it's more precious jewelry, and it's got words, and it's our DNA are words that turn around, and the words are always words of empowerment. And with Ibara, it's more poetry, but poetry that also invokes love. So, Arabic is such, I think it's one of the top languages of love. And our poetry, we have millions of verses of poetry all on love. I think in Arabic, we have 90 words for love. What other language has 90 words for love? So our Ibara is all based on poetry and love and Arabic. And so the whole reason the brands are there is for people to wear them and remember to love themselves. Simplified, people wear our brands to feel love and remember that they are loved and remember to love themselves.
That's absolutely beautiful. And what a great way to use jewelry as a talisman to produce these feelings and of self-empowerment and to remind ourselves again and again. I love the idea that you can see them and that your pieces spin, but you can see these words and that you are constantly reminded to remember for yourself
Exactly.
the beauty of your own self. It's a very powerful talisman that really comes back to the wearer and can be passed on as an heirloom and forever remembered to be thoughtful towards everyone else and yourself. That's absolutely beautiful. What would you like to see as change around the world for women in the industry or in any industry? Where are some places that you feel we need to do some work?
If I look at, and I'll start with the jewelry industry. What I would like is for women to know their value more, to stop following brands just because there's a lot of marketing for that brand when the brand doesn't really add any value to the wearer. Just wearing a brand because it's a brand, that is a sign of low self-esteem. When you wear a brand because you think it's beautiful, that is fabulous. But when you wear a brand just because everyone else is wearing it, or it's a brand and you want that brand, that's to me a sign of a form of unworthiness. So you want to grow your worth. So I would ask women to think more about why they want to wear a piece of jewelry. Why are they wearing this jewelry? Because there's a lot of emotions that jewelry can invoke, and just an emotion of being rich is not valid anymore. I mean, people are growing richer by the day. People have more spending power than they've ever had before. So I think the best thing for women to do would be to be more selective in the jewelry they wear, because the jewelry, everything has energy. And when you wear the right jewelry with the right message, with the right energy, it'll just uplift you. Whereas if you're wearing jewelry just because it's a brand and to show your wealth, it cannot uplift you as much. It will not bring you as much pleasure as when you wear jewelry, because it invokes a sense of joy, happiness. Sometimes jewelry, I know gemstones do invoke a lot of emotions. My daughter's a crystal healer, and I know the effects of gemstones on a person. So wear jewelry that makes you feel good. Wear jewelry that makes you feel better. Not just wear jewelry. And I say that because in the Gulf, especially in the Gulf and in Kuwait, we wear jewelry all the time. It's safe. You can wear jewelry. You can go out no matter how big or small it is. It's very safe to wear the biggest diamond and go out in the middle of the day and walk in the middle of the street. And so, women wear jewelry the whole time. So make a conscious decision to wear jewelry that uplifts you. I think I will summarize it in that.
I think that's a wonderful way to look at how trends can skew our vision as to what we think we need to have. I think about Levi's jeans, for instance. They're great, but if they don't really fit you properly, they're not that great. So we want to make sure that when we pick something that we have some conscious thought about it, and it actually does some good, not only for the people that have built it, but for the people who now wear it.
Exactly.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way to make some choices in this world that can change the way trends are now being set.
And also it can change the way women feel. One thing I've done throughout the years is just wear things, whatever, even around the house. If I have a painting or an artwork or anything that does not bring me joy, I just take it away. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't care who's done that artwork. I really don't care anymore. I don't care how much I paid for that bag or that dress. If it does not bring me joy, if I don't see it and smile because I have affinity to that object, I just don't keep it around. So I've limited my life to just things that I look at and smile. And if I don't smile when I see them, if I don't smile when I see jewelry I've had, I just don't wear it. If I see a piece of jewelry and it's beautiful, it could be the best made jewelry in the world. And if it doesn't make me smile, doesn't make my heart lift, I just, and that's just made my life so much better. And I think women should do that. Women have a lot of, we feel we are very emotive race, very emotive gender. And so we should go with our emotions, and our emotions should not be dictated by other people. They should be ours, and we should go by them.
I think that's really, really important. I see that. I know you and I have both raised each 4 children, and how the girls I noticed and that I had, my 2 daughters, would want something just because it was a brand name and not because it fit properly or if it was well made. And hopefully now in their 30s, they've certainly changed their attitudes. But I think we can even look to young people and start empowering them, women in particular, to pick and choose things that have an energy. And that energy is real. That comes,
I have 100%.
100%, that lineage of where the item comes from, how it is manufactured, and how it finally comes to the individual is definitely an important part of the process of our purchasing power and how we should be purchasing, rather than just what I would consider to be rote following the market. I think that's really, really powerful and important, especially to young people.
They'll learn. My encouragement to them is not to, because at 30, 40, you start realizing you're worth more than what people dictate to you. So it'll be wonderful. And the younger generation really do have more self-worth than our generation or the generation younger than us. I think that the younger generation are just so powerful. And I really would ask them just to continue their power and not to be diminished by marketing ploys just to fit in. They don't need to fit in. No one should fit in. We should all have our own character, own preferences. That's the fun thing of life, is just to be you.
And unique is beautiful. And that has to stand. I think a lot of young people, I remember with my kids being younger, they felt like if they didn't have a certain brand for a backpack or something like that, they were embarrassed. And I think what we're saying here is stand proud on whatever you have and whatever you can afford at the time, and make it your statement about you and not someone else's statement about what they think you should want. And I think that's very, very important. What are your suggestions that you would give to emerging designers based on your cultural experiences? What advantages do you enjoy coming from your country? What do you see in Kuwait? Tell me a little bit about emerging designers and what your advice to them might be.
We have a lot of designers coming out of Kuwait. As we both agree, the younger generation have a vivid imagination, and they're go-getters, and they like being entrepreneurs. More and more in Kuwait, and I think all around the world, people don't want to enter the corporate world, and they are carving a place for them in the entrepreneurial world. And jewelry designers and designers as a whole are in the Arab world, in Kuwait and all around the world, are making a difference. The younger designers have a different eye, they have a different way of thinking. If I can give something from my experience, is start locally, grow very strong locally before you grow out. We try to do it the other way, and definitely it can work, but most of the time it doesn't work. So my recommendation would be really become very strong in your local community, in your country, in your region before you go on international.
I love that, because then whatever you design or produce becomes a part of your culture and gives your culture a representation in the world and isn't overlooked. And I think,
and you have to have a story, yeah. And you have to have a story. You have to have a reason for being. You can't just make a brand to compete. And I think, I believe that all young entrepreneurs know that. They all have stories. They all have a reason to start what they're doing. So a story is very important, and also the cultural roots are very, very important.
Absolutely. And in graduate school, I also learned that come from your own place rather than trying to assume somebody else's place. Your place is equally as important as anyone else's. And I think starting small and starting at home is a very important piece of advice for emerging designers. I think that's wonderful. And it maintains that cultural connection and that heirloom connection with the culture. I'm very connected to that myself, and I feel it very deeply. And we certainly feel it when we put a piece of grandmother's jewelry on. We know everything when we touch that ring or touch
again, it's a feeling. It invokes a feeling. It's a feeling. And when you have a culture, it invokes a feeling with people.
It does. It really does. And it's a narrative, and it's a language which I think can connect to other people. I think that's beautiful. What are some problem-solving techniques you use when you encounter any difficulties, no matter what it is, without necessarily being specific, but some of the processing that occurs as an artist when you come up against something that appears to be an obstacle? Do you have a methodology for getting around that, or do you have any a systematic way of removing that obstacle?
You know, I've had a lot of years of experience with obstacles and problems and all of that. And my easiest methodology is to know that I can handle it, and that it's not a big deal. The bigger you make that obstacle, the bigger a mountain it becomes. And just to know that it's normal to have or to face challenges throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your life, and just savor the challenges and think, oh my God, I'm learning something from this. So my methodology is, oh my God, I'm going to learn something brilliant when I have this solved. And it really gets solved every time, every single time. And if it doesn't get solved in the way I want it to be solved, it will get solved or resolved in a way that it should. And just to go with the flow. The biggest thing I've learned from my life as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, as a designer is just go with the flow. Just go with the flow, and doors just open.
I'm laughing because that's how this book came about, and how and the doors just flew open.
Exactly.
And I didn't have to force anything. I felt like each step of the way was revealed if I listened very carefully. It wasn't always easy, I will say that.
But that's fun. Imagine if life was all easy and everything, anything you wanted happened. It'll be boring after a few weeks.
Yes.
And so the challenges are what makes us realize that we are smart, we are capable, we are powerful. These challenges make life much more interesting. And so I enjoy the challenges now and think, oh my God, I know I'm going to resolve it. I know I'm going to solve it. I'll just go with the flow.
That's fantastic. And what a great message when somebody gets stuck. They can just not feel so pressured, but realize that there will always be a way, one way or another, to be able to resolve that problem.
Yeah. And you know, successful entrepreneurs, successful business people become great at problem solving because they just, it's a muscle that you grow. And so the more you're able to look at them that, oh, I'm growing my muscle, it's just my daily exercise or my weekly exercise or my monthly exercise, the easier it gets. And so things that would really knock me off my feet a few years ago now are like, oh my God, that's so easy. So you learn. So be open to learning as you go.
And you can build off that. Once you learn that, now you have a new set of skills that you can move forward with. And then the next challenge may come up, but you've come to another level.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic. What would you like us to know about you and your work? This is an opportunity to showcase your philosophy and perspectives in this industry. I truly want to hear about you and your process.
As a human being, and I call myself a human being, I love to be of value in this world. And so, you know, all my NGOs, all my philanthropic work, and, you know, the cream on or the cherry on top is both my brands. They all feed into the same cake, which is making this a better world for me and for other people. And so when I started this brand, I started it not because I wanted to start a brand. I really never thought of starting a brand. It's when I wanted to start the NGO, I wanted to have sustainability for the NGO, and I decided to start a brand so it finances the NGO. And so for me, this gives it a bigger meaning than just having a brand that does well and thrives. So that's part of me that I'm really proud of, that everything I do does have a reason for being. I could have started a brand 20 years ago. I wasn't interested because 20 years ago, I was designing for my family and my friends. And I thought, this is so much fun, but there's no reason to start a brand. It's only when I wanted to start the NGO that I started the brand. And this is part of it, of the brand's DNA, but it's also part of my giving back to the world, giving back to other human beings. And I think that is the most I like about myself is that I always like to look at the bigger picture, but also to be of value to myself and also to the rest of the world. Well, and I say it now with all pride because I used to be very shy about saying what I do or how much I do, and now I say it with all conviction because the more I talk about what I do, the more I allow other women to also speak about what they do, because what I've realized is women undervalue what they do. They undervalue their contribution to the world. And so I boast about what I do because I want other women to boast about what they do. The more we boast, the more we'll believe our power and our ability to change the world. So, yep, one thing I like about me is I'm a powerful person that does powerful stories that call jewelry, that inspire powerful women who to tell their stories. And hopefully, not hopefully, definitely, through the Ansar Foundation and through the support of Intisars for the Ansar Foundation, we will bring peace to the Arab world. We will be part of the peace building in the Arab world.
That's simply amazing. And I'm choking back tears.
Oh, thank
Because
you.
I really am in such awe of who you are and have felt this for so long since we've met. And I can't imagine having any better conversation about something so important as women's placement on this planet. And your work is incredible, both through your narrative in the jewelry, but also what you are doing for other women. I think what I hear and what I'm seeing for myself is that when we give ourselves permission to be great, we give other women permission to be great. And that's how we're going to create that ripple throughout the
Exactly.
universe. And that is
Exactly.
the most important work.
Thank you for saying it in a much simpler way than I did. I love it.
I just took what you said and and tried to
Thank you.
process it, but I have to say
Thank you.
it works for everybody.
Thank you.
Princess Intisar, thank you so much for your interview today. I can't wait to speak to you again. And I am honored and flattered to be considered your friend. And I look forward to the next time we meet.
Oh God, I can't wait. We had so
We
much
have
fun
lots to
last
do.
time. Yes, we do.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you so much.
and thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Tonight, we are going to interview A. And if you would finish your name for me so I can hear it once, I would love to hear.
Yes, sure. A Yang Pugh.
A. Neen Pugh. And tonight we're going to interview A. A is, when she was in high school, she entered a competition to create a bottle printing, and she won first prize. This early success planted the seed that perhaps she could really make a living as an artist. Her company's name is Moncel and is derived from the French word mondaine, meaning a woman who is fashionable. For A, jewelry is the finishing touch to an outfit, one that pulls everything together. She feels that jewelry design should be both a statement of who you are as a person and a talisman that is infused with sentimentality and healing properties. There is often an accompanying story that can be passed down for generations. Her greatest example of this principle is the ring she now wears that belonged to her beloved mother. A, welcome here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to New York City Jewelry Week. Here we are, one of the four corners of the world. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for having me and for this opportunity to have this interview.
It's beautiful. And I loved having the interview that we had in the book, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about you personally. And I think this is important in terms of who we are and how we work. And I think that we have a lot to offer in that respect. My first question for you tonight is, what is it like to live in your country? And I'd like to hear a description. I don't know if I ever have a chance to visit Myanmar. I would love to, but I would love to see it through your eyes right now, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little insight as to what it's like to live there.
Yes, sure. So I was born in Myanmar. It's a beautiful country in Southeast Asia. It's surrounding with countries such as China, India, Laos, and Thailand. And I felt the need to mention that because a lot of people, when I say I'm from Myanmar, they go, "Oh, where would that be?" So I always try to explain, "Oh, it's a bordering country with Thailand," and they immediately go, "Okay, yeah, I've been to Thailand," but not a lot of people have heard of Myanmar. So I'm happy to be here to talk more about it. So most of my childhood was spent in Myanmar. I was born here, and after the age of 14, I moved to Singapore for a few years, and then I moved to Canada, which is now my second home. But often all these years, I was living abroad, I would have this nostalgic longing for Myanmar, and my memories of it are quite personal, and often I would say it's quite romanticized view of Myanmar that I have, and which is what I want to share with you here right now before I talk about the current situations, what I love about it. So one of the things I absolutely love is Myanmar has a tropical rainforest type of climate that you would see in countries like Singapore. So one of the things I absolutely love is just waking up and just hearing the birds right outside your windows. I lived in Toronto for about 14 years in a high rise, and this is something that you don't hear, just waking up to the sound of melodies of birds singing, and it just puts you in a good mood to wake up and go on and go on about your day and get things done. It also reminds me of my childhood at my parents' house. Right outside the windows, we have these big trees, and it's just like a wake up melody for you. So it's one of the things I love. It's just so different. It's this stark difference from big cities like Toronto and Singapore. And then another thing I absolutely love about Myanmar is I'm from the city called Yangon, which is also the biggest city here. And we have this Buddhist pagoda that I love to visit, and is also considered one of the seven wonders of the world. It's called Sri Dagon.
Did not know that. That's phenomenal.
Yes, and as a jeweler, I want to mention a bit more about how it's built and the physical structure of it. So the stupa is built with solid gold plates that are gilded on to the brick structure. And then at the very tip of it, the uppermost part of the stupa, it's called the umbrella crown. It's covered in so many gemstones, including over 2,300 rubies and over 5,000 diamonds. And there's so many other precious gems such as emeralds, sapphires, all kinds of sapphires. And among all these gems, the biggest one being the 72 carat. Some sources say 72 carat, some sources say 76 carat diamond at the very tip of that crown. So it's
This
just
is a
so
building, is that correct?
it's a pagoda, it's a shrine, but it's a temple. It has this typical pagoda stupas that you would see in Asia, in Asian countries
Yes.
like Thailand. So at the very tip is where it's covered. You have this little crown that goes up, and it's covered in all these gemstones. That's been donated by actually patrons over the years. So donation is also a big part in Myanmar. I will go on and talk about it later, more about the culture of donating here. So aside from all these lovely jewels, I just love to visit there, either early in the morning or in the evening after the sun has gone down, and you just feel this peace and calmness that I wouldn't feel anywhere else. It's the kind of peacefulness that you would seek after a very busy and tiring day at work. It kind of transcends you to this state of just pure serenity. So we have this, once you're there, you would hear this sounds of the bells in the background. They're just chiming with the wind, and the flooring is the best flooring of white marble. So it's such a stark contrast from the golden Buddha sitting on it, and then you have this white marble that's just so cooling to the eyes, and it's also situated on a hill, so you feel this breeze. And I think a combination of all of this sensations just puts a visitor, especially for myself speaking personally, in a state of mind that that it's just so peaceful and I don't feel it anywhere else. And as a jewelry designer, I feel that my profession requires me to be with my thoughts all the time, whether it's problem solving or thinking design strategy. And being in a place like this really helps me to hear myself think and also allows me to reset my mind. And one other thing I love about Myanmar, as I was mentioned earlier, is that the sense of close-knit community. So we have parents and children living together, or if not together, close to one another. And I feel that with the recent pandemic and whatnot, I feel that loneliness issue is becoming very serious in countries in the West and many other countries.
Oh,
I feel, yes, here it's a big part of the culture to support one another and to be there for one another. Even if you don't live together, you're always there for each other. You're still close to one another. And, through all your happiness and sorrows and sharing everything and even food. That's what I love, is that you will share food, even if you don't eat together with each other. You will send over food. Hey, I cooked this today. Why don't you come and get it? Or if not, I can send someone to your house. That culture of just sharing, whether it's food or small little gifts, or just talking about your successes and sorrows and whatnot. It's very much part of the culture, and I think it's quite lovely. And also the culture of donating. So you may have only enough to eat for the day, but if a monk comes to your house during lunchtime and asks for food, you always have something. You will put aside something. You give priority to giving. So that community and culture sharing, I think it's quite lovely. It's what I love about this country.
What a beautiful story. Not only are you a phenomenal, eloquent storyteller, but I just got a picture of Myanmar that I may never have ever been able to have. I'm absolutely stunned at how beautiful that was. I really have a great idea now of why I would want to come there and how it affects you probably as a jewelry designer. My next question is what it's like to be a jewelry designer in Myanmar, and what does your day look like? How does that work out? I'm hearing birds and there's sparkling pagodas and monks at your door for lunch. I now would love to hear how you go about your jewelry business and how you work as a businesswoman.
Yes, sure. So I started my career in Toronto, in Canada. So soon after graduating with a Bachelor of Design, I launched my own brand, Moncel, in 2015, and it became successful quickly, especially because of a collection I made, which was inspired by my childhood memories in Myanmar. So Myanmar has always been very much integrated into my life, even though I was away for 20 years. And Moncel we now have bases and distributions in Toronto, here in Myanmar, as well as some distributions in Thailand. So my experiences as a jewelry designer in Toronto is quite different from that of Myanmar. And I will talk a little bit in comparison of what it's like to work in both places.
Okay, that
So,
sounds great.
so in Myanmar, we have so many rich reserves, but as you may well know, it's not so much seen as a design hub. And Myanmar is home to, I would say, if my statistics are not wrong, more than 80 to 90% of rubies that you see all across the world, as well as so many precious sapphires as well. However, Myanmar doesn't have favorable conditions for foreign investment or companies to come in and do business here. um, because currently it's lacking favorable conditions to export. That's where a lot of companies have issues. So we have a lot of restrictions in exporting jewelry. So that hasn't been attractive for people, foreign investment to come in. So in addition to these unfavorable conditions of the country, jewelry is an industry where it hasn't been focused so much by the younger generations because of its rich resources. Wearing and possessing jewelry here in our culture is integrated as an investment or an asset rather than being cherished from the design aspect.
I see.
So people put more emphasis on the carat of the gems or the weight of the gold of the jewelry piece than being valued or any consideration given to the design of it or even the designer behind it. So in my personal experience, it is quite challenging to be a designer here. No matter how talented you are, I feel that as a country, Myanmar is not there yet to appreciate design and art solely from the point of intellectual property and giving respect for the work. And so often people would come to me and they would ask, they would look at the pieces and then they just ended up taking the design to another local goldsmith and making it because they only want to pay for how many grams of gold my design will have or what stone, how many carat is the stone in the piece.
I think what I'm hearing is that in some cases, it's just a commodity. And
Right.
as a designer, and I think there's a lot of designers who would feel that there's a lot more to jewelry and design than simply a carat weight or the carat of gold. It also has great meaning for a family member or as an heirloom treasure.
Yes, definitely. So what's happening is the market is saturated with simpler forms of jewelry that will hold just simple lines of gems, stones, lines and lines of gems with no innovation whatsoever. It is quite unfortunate because Myanmar is a country where if you say, people may not know where Myanmar is, but once you mention Burmese rubies, the whole world knows Burmese rubies.
Yeah.
And it is from Myanmar. So it is quite unfortunate that as a country, the innovation is not catching up to the popularity of the stones that we have here and the resources. Yes.
Well, I think that that's possibly something that you can bring to the table is a change and that innovation, as you're saying. I
Yes.
think that's really
So,
important. And
yes.
possibly the cutting edge. It could be the front edge of a change in that direction.
Yes, correct. So I feel that until the perception of gems being only as an investment rather than a cherished art piece can be changed, like you were mentioning, there is no place as of now for the creative talent, but it is my hope one day to start a conversation around this with younger designers with talents who wants to follow suit in my steps and then try to bring about change. Yeah.
I love that. And that is that is everything right there. That's so great. I can really understand. What would you like to see change around the world for women in this industry? What are you thinking in terms of that?
For jewelry industry, as we all know, it's very much male dominated and businesses and knowledge are passed down from generations to generations. Goldsmiths are often male and businesses are family run, and we don't we don't necessarily see women at the forefront of a jewelry business as either goldsmiths or let alone owners. And as a woman running a jewelry business, my hope really is to support women in the industry and in my practice in any way I can, whether it's creating a more balanced ratio of men and women in the workforce. And it is also my hope to inspire more younger women to pursue their dreams, and hopefully by lead of example. And I feel I have a more optimistic view about this industry because I know currently it is still male dominated. But because the way I started my career, I didn't become a jewelry designer or enter the jewelry industry because of my family. I started it because I was passionate about it, and I was also allowed to study and learn it as a college degree at a school, at an art school. So I feel that, and also I've noticed more and more popular art schools all around the world are offering jewelry making, on the bench as a subject.
Yes.
And it's the popularity and the reputation of these schools are just attracting more and more younger students. And I think as more and more younger students see how other women designers are doing well and being successful in this industry and starting their own brands, I think that really gives them confidence and encouragement to enter this male-dominated industry. And I feel that in this day and age where you're able to reach out to suppliers all across the world, no matter where you're from, whether it's for sourcing components or sourcing chains, or even the actual process of manufacturing the pieces, with emails and Zoom calls, which now seem to be the norm, people are able to reach out to these suppliers just very easily, and they can test and contact and test so many different suppliers and see what works best for them,
Right.
and then make decisions that are best for them. So I definitely think the jewelry industry has evolved to be more inclusive, also because women are able to partake through these institutions that I mentioned earlier, and also and the easy access to suppliers globally
Yes.
has made it easier for women to be a part of this industry instead of, oh, I wasn't born into it, so I might not have a chance to make it in this industry. I think that is changing, and it's exciting for me to be a part of that change.
That's an incredibly, a sharp perspective. I think that, that pretty much says it all, that having access to anything, education,
Education, yes,
information,
right.
which is one of the things I love about this book, is the connections that the more we have, the more resources we have. It's well documented that women use the resources to put back into the community, to take care of families, and to further others in their career, because our success is imminent with that.
Correct. Yeah.
What are some problem-solving techniques that you would impart to us when things get difficult? What are some of the processes that you go through to resolve something, not necessarily specific, but more the process of how to get around an obstacle that's
Right.
really
Yes.
stopping you from moving forward?
Okay. I started quite young in this industry just because I was so passionate about sharing my designs. I was working for this jewelry company. They specialize in engagement rings and wedding rings, and I would design for the company and oftentimes it's the same things over and over again. And I was doing it for months and months, and I just wanted to go out and create and my own ideas and share. So I left and I decided I would just start my own thing. And I was quite young, and the one of the advantages that when you're young, you don't think too much. You just know what you want to do. So you go out and do it instead of measuring the risks and thinking, oh, what if I fail? I didn't think much, and I just got out and try to do something, and very fortunately it all worked out very well. But obviously it hasn't been a smooth sail. I started as a one woman operation. I was just excited and living off of coffee and excitement. And then there's a lot of barriers. Back then it was about nearly 8-10 years ago. Information wasn't as easily accessible as we are today, and so I had to learn my own. I had to learn from my own problems and my own barriers to get to where I am. And one of the things that I do when I'm absolutely stuck is I would try. I have learned to network. I think networking is very
Yeah,
key
that's
in
always
any
important.
business. Yes.
Find
So
it,
you
call a friend.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So you want to keep a network of professionals that you can consult to, that you can go to. And you also want to keep a group of trusted people, whether family, friends, or colleagues that you can turn to when you're in a situation where you need help. Um, and often I am someone who can't rest until I have a solution. So I would try to separate the emotion from the problem and just think through the issues until I have a solution. And to get to the solution, sometimes you have to rely on your resources. So it's good to have a very good networking skill.
I think that comes with a level of business professionalism, is to not take everything emotionally, but rather
Yes.
process it just in a very systematic manner. And that seems to get a lot of people through, just one step in front of the other, as always. What would you like us to know about you? What would you like us to know about your business? Tell us a little bit about Moncel and your designs.
Yes, so I started Moncel with the vision to create beautiful pieces. So I have an art background. I started painting since very young. I've always wanted to be an artist and even pursue fine arts as my college degree. But I decided that jewelry design and designing jewelry is also very much related to arts, and also you can become very entrepreneurial with this industry. Whereas if you're just an artist, I learned that from my father. He was always saying, "Oh, you need to have your own. You have to be very entrepreneurial. Don't work for someone all your life." And all these lessons that I would learn from him kind of pushed me to pursuing design career. And
That's great.
I started I started with focusing more on fashion jewelry, so gold-plated pieces, and now my vision has switched to high jewelry, so the pieces that will that will stand the test of time. And in order to fulfill my vision, you have to be very good at what you so one of the advice that I always give when younger people come to me is that be very, very good at what you do, and you have to learn your craft first. So know the production, how the pieces are made, how it's designed, and how it impacts not only just the consumers, but the overall business as an industry. So be patient and learn your craft. And speaking from my personal experience as a designer in Canada or in Toronto, people see an art piece, a jewelry piece, they really appreciate. They would appreciate it. They're willing to pay for the price. They appreciate not only just the work, but the designer behind it. And then I have recently I have been spending more time in Myanmar in the past 2 years since my mom has passed away. And one thing I learned here is that no matter how talented you are, sometimes people may still not be able to appreciate it. But it is not their fault. You just have to keep doing what you do best. And if you come from a place of talent, honesty, and strength, one day people will learn to respect you. So don't give up too easily. And it's also what I'm telling myself every day. Because these are challenges I'm facing on daily currently. So and it's important to protect your design. So intellectual property rights, Burma doesn't have, even if you wanted to put a copyright on it, we still don't have these laws that allow you to do it. It's just beginning to implement them right now. So it is tough to be a designer here, but it is my hope one day to be in a position where I can influence these rules and regulations in favor of the designers and the art and the younger people, so that bigger companies can't just come and take advantage of you.
Well, I want to thank you for your words of wisdom today. And I also want to ask the audience to follow you at Monsell. Is that correct, on Instagram?
Yes, correct.
And if you have any other contact information, please pass that along. And I thank you so much for everything tonight. I really got a great sense of what Myanmar might be like, and how important it is for you to be working there and have the ideas that you do to change what isn't working and hopefully facilitate that which will work in the future. So I couldn't be more excited to have you in the book, and I couldn't be more excited to meet with you tonight. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you again. You have a great.
Thank you so much, Linda. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.